right, excellent. Welcome to Teams Talks. I'm David Powers. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully this isn't your first time joining us, but if it is, our goal in this program is to provide students with an opportunity to meet one of our Mavs Edge partners and discuss a topic that is relevant to your career search. We're fortunate today to be joined by Lane Gorman Trubitt. Representative Lucas LaChance is with us, a partner in growth practice, and we're going to discuss how best to market yourself and sell yourself to employers. And we've talked a lot about networking in previous episodes, but we're going to get a little more, I guess, granular in terms of the qualities you should possess and how to put yourself out there. Thanks for joining me today, Lucas.
Thanks. It's great to be here, David. Hey, everybody.
Another way I like to start is just by doing some formal introductions. Many students, when we talk about, this is a perfect segue into talking about branding yourself. It's important to be able to introduce yourself properly, to understand what to include in an introduction, to understand the context of the event when you're introducing yourself. So we like to spend some time doing quick elevator pitches. And students who are joining us, if you would like, when we finish with our pitches and provide a few pointers, if you would like to introduce yourself, you're welcome to unmute your microphone and your camera and make an introduction. That's what this event is all about, meeting our partners. No pressure, though. If you're not ready for all of that, you don't have to do it. I'll get us started with my typical pitch or introduction. I'm David Powers. I'm the Assistant Director of Internships here at UTA's Career Development Center. That means I assist our employer partners with developing internship programs and then assist them with recruiting UTA students. Lucas.
All right. Well, you mentioned that some of the other Teams Talks have focused on networking. So I do a lot of networking as part of my role in business development. But it's hard to communicate what you do in accounting. It's hard to articulate that in a way that resonates with folks. So generally, I step back from the technical side of it. And so like my standard approach, when you're given 30 seconds to do an introduction is something like, hi, I'm Lucas LaChance with Lane Gorman Trubitt. We're a public accounting firm in Uptown that has been around for more than 70 years. We're a one-stop shop for everything you need for your business to be successful.
Excellent. That's great. A good pitch, a great introduction to the company as well. So now we'll give some awkward wait time to see if we have any students who would like to unmute and turn on the camera to make an introduction. And typically, I know I said we were going to give some pointers first. Typically what you'd want to hear, if I were a recruiter at a fair, if I were meeting you the first time, if you're out there on the job search, I'm going to be interested in, obviously, your name, your major, your time to graduation, when I can hire you, what you're currently looking for, whether that be an internship or full-time position, because that's going to guide my questions and the conversation. And then I always like to try to include some fun fact about yourself, if you can, or have a great question. Have done your research and have a great question about the program, about the position, about the industry, about the company or the firm. So all that being said, no pressure. I feel like there's a lot of buildup there. Would anyone like to introduce themselves, please? If I was better with technology, I would play the Jeopardy theme song right here.
We have a willing volunteer.
We do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lasta Mohersen, and I'm currently in my senior year doing mathematics and data science. I'm a Mavs program facilitator, and I help manage employers-related services with and also help with analyzing reports and data and collecting data and all those stuff. And it's really nice meeting you both. Thank you.
It's great to meet you as well. We appreciate you volunteering and doing your introduction for us.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lasta. Thanks for breaking the ice. Let's see if we have any additional takers. That usually helps build the courage. Great intro. Again, I'll give it a couple seconds. If we have anyone join us a bit late, we might work back to that and permit them to introduce themselves. Because again, I do want to give students that opportunity for the practice and the meeting. But before we actually hit the record button, Lucas, you were talking a little bit about your background, at your career path, that your trajectory you took to get to this role. I think it would really be beneficial to students to hear and participate in that part of the conversation. Do you mind to tell us more about yourself and your background, please, to get started?
Sure, absolutely. I am what is called a non-traditional student, which is really just code for old people that go back to school. So I did my undergrad and master's work actually both at UTD. And when I started out, I come from a long line of family members that work in education, English teachers. My grandfather owned his own newspaper. So it really was kind of expected that I was going to go into liberal arts and then into something English related. Now, as you can imagine, it's a pretty far jump to running business development and marketing at an accounting firm. And so nothing ever pans out the way that you plan it to be. So I did. I went through my undergrad and I got my English degree and I got a companion history degree and an art history minor. So I was really in for the liberal arts and I was all set to get into the world of publishing. And so I started working at a publishing house in Dallas and I hated it. Absolutely hated the work. So I thought, well, now what am I going to do? And a friend of mine was working at a bank. She worked at a bank part-time. This was actually in my my junior year that I started working at the publishing house and I realized that I hated it. And so I thought, well, okay, I have one more year to go. I have to completely figure out what I'm going to do with my life because what I planned on for the last 3 years isn't going to work. And a friend of mine at the bank said, come and work with us. They'll work around your schedule for school. You can finish your degree and then figure out what you want to do. And I got into banking, which I realized I really enjoyed working with people. And I had an aptitude for numbers that I hadn't ever really bothered to explore. And honestly, that began a 10-year career in banking and finance. Now, the problem with that, though, is that I didn't have any academic background for it. So as you can imagine, I was capped out pretty quickly. So at 27, I went back to school, went back to UTD, and I got accepted into their master's program, and I got a master's in accounting. Nothing from my undergrad transferred over, except because I had an English degree, I got credit for the business writing course. But other than that, I did my master's work and I had to start from scratch. So I never ever thought that I would wind up. I mean, when I said I was going to accounting, everyone thought I was crazy because I'd never shown any aptitude or any interest in that. But actually, it's not. It's a great field, and I get to do the things that I really find that I like best, and that's working with people. I do love numbers, and problem solving. And honestly, since 2007, when I joined my firm here, that's really what the thrust of my job has been. And for me, it turns out perfectly. I mean, those are all the things that I really enjoy. But if you told 17-year-old me as I was graduating from high school that I'd be, 30 years later, I'd be in my mid 40s and a partner at an accounting firm,
Wow.
There's no way I could have made that path work. I wouldn't have thought it was possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I said, I appreciate you sharing that. I can relate in a lot of ways. I was an adult, non-traditional student who went back for their master's at age 30, and I was a history social studies major in my undergraduate. The only thing you can do with that is teach.
Yeah.
Or so I thought, right? Or that was kind of the intention. And then I had to. Eventually, I ended up teaching, but I had to get over some things. I had to get over some things first, some fears that I had. But so I can 100% relate. I was curious, for UTA's student population tends to be a bit older, skews to the older side of things. I think maybe mid 20s or so. I mean, historically, a commuter population, a transfer population coming from the community colleges. And I was just kind of curious what it was like going back. You said at 27. I mean, what was that like?
The university experience wasn't actually wasn't very unusual. I went to UTD, which also has a history of being kind of a commuter school. Way back in the 90s when I attended, they were just cycling through their first 4-year class. So, it being a university where you go for 4 years was really fresh and new at UTD, and a lot of the folks were commuters. Honestly, the biggest shock for me was once I switched careers. I left banking and went to public accounting in 2007. The big shock for me was I was competing for jobs with people that were 5 and 6 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So it was the change in the workforce where I had my first boss was younger than I was. She'd been in accounting from the get-go. She was younger than me, but she was a real go-getter, and she at her mid-20s was a manager at the firm. She was
Wow.
my supervisor, and I was older than she was.
Yeah.
So
Weird for her
those
too,
type
I
of
guess, right?
dynamics.
Yeah, right.
That was the unusual part. The university part was great because
Right.
I was going to school with folks that were, pursuing the same thing I was, and we weren't too far different in age. But the workforce adjustment was a big one.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's and circling back to something else that you mentioned, and I appreciate you being so honest and transparent and saying that you hated it. I mean, in your career path, I mean, initially the direction you thought you might want to go and the direction maybe you were gently influenced maybe to go, you didn't like it. And something I wanted to bring up to students, because that's the work we do is in internships, is one of the great values of internships and experiential learning is test driving those careers before you get there, right? I mean, college is expensive. It is a commitment of time and a lot of resources. So you want to do everything you can to experience the field beforehand, right?
Yeah.
So, and there are so many opportunities to do that, which we'll talk a little bit about, and that's probably a good segue into. I know we mentioned maybe talking briefly about the internship program there, and kind of a description maybe of the company for students who aren't aware, who are kind of joining us with that curiosity. I'm going to be placing some things in the comments section. Of course, we'll be following up with direct links to career sites and that sort of thing, so students can apply. Obviously, we're telling them to look for those opportunities in Handshake, because we know those are being posted in Handshake. But would you like to talk just a bit about the organization or the current internship program?
Sure, absolutely. We've had an internship program actually since right about the time that I joined LGT. I was one of the last direct hires that the firm had before the internship program was rolled out. And the folks that have been here for a long time, they kid me, and they basically have said to me, well, we had to have the internship program because we need to do a better job screening, because clearly you made it through and we need to, but 15 years later, they still let me come to work, so it's okay. But we've had the internship for a long time, and it's for us, we don't really segregate interns from the staff. I mean, we give the same opportunities that we're giving our junior staff as they're learning and developing as well. And our internship program has been very successful. We've had, at least in the accounting world, we've had a number of people who joined and came through the internship program who are now partners at the firm. So we have a tremendous amount of longevity here. Folks that have come to the firm really have made it their home and have demonstrated you can make a very good career and a very good living in the accounting profession. So our interns, they get exposure to a wide variety of clients, industries, and the type of work that you're going to be doing, whether it's tax or accounting and consulting, bookkeeping work, or audit. And then, of course, we make sure that our interns are always included. So interns are included to all the firm events. They participate in the young professionals group. And then, of course, we hold positions after your internship until graduation. And often, for interns, we'll hold that 2-3 semesters, depending on where each student is in their cycle and where they are in terms of graduation. It's not uncommon for us to hold positions for folks that we really want to come back. Then once you get on board full time, we have a mentorship program. There's tuition assistance, and then we also provide money for you for your CPA exam. So, it's our internship program. We want to make sure, much like the college experience that you were talking about, David, that you get as much exposure as possible to the industry, because this is the opportunity for you to decide, is this really where I want to go? Is this what I want to do? Or is there a different type of path that I can pursue?
Yeah, exactly. And I know that what I'm excited to hear, and what I know students are excited to hear is just the opportunities that may result after the internship. I mean, because I know so many students, that's it. That's the dream scenario, right? Is to get the internship and the internship wrap up, and then you have, if you worked your way into a potential full-time opportunity. So that's fantastic to hear. And something else we always look for in the quality of an internship program and the experience is exactly what you mentioned in terms of involving the student and the mentoring and supervision piece. I mean, it's so important. I mean, that separates, the internship, the learning experience from a full-time job, right? I mean, students are often concerned about, they're afraid to ask questions. Who do I ask questions to? Are they going to be teaching me, working with me? What's that going to be like? So that's excellent. That's super. I mean, that's great to hear. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about branding when we get into the topic in just a moment. But I thought another interesting bit that I don't know that we covered, you mentioned that your role sort of evolved from accounting or auditing, I think you mentioned, to a different role, maybe a different focus. So would you care to talk about that as we lead into talking about personal branding?
Sure. Well, and that's the thing. You have the plans, you make the plans, but they don't necessarily always turn out the way that you envision. And like I said, this 17-year-old me had realized that they were going to be a partner in an accounting firm, I wouldn't have been able to put the pieces together. But I'd been with the firm about 8 years, and I came in audit. So I worked primarily with construction companies, manufacturing and distribution companies, as well as not-for-profit organizations. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the audit work. But what I also equally enjoyed was working with these different companies and these different organizations and getting to know how they function. And so after about 8 years, the partners came to me and they said, "You're an accountant who can talk to people. We would like you to run this group at our firm called Practice Growth." And what Practice Growth is marketing, publishing, advertising, special events, social media, and business development. But I also continue to keep my CPA license so that I can, if I'm talking with prospective clients about how their business is operating, keeping that CPA license and that designation helps me be able to talk to them on their level about what's happening within the company and talk about the numbers themselves, because they tell the story. There's a funny anecdote that I hear all the time, and it's how do you tell an extroverted accountant? And it's when they look at your shoes rather than their own when they talk to you. So
I like that.
I mean, accountants aren't really known for having that outgoing personality. So finding a position at a firm that fits the personality that I have, I didn't know anything like that existed, and I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been with the firm for so long and spent time learning the fundamentals, getting the accounting underneath me, and the basic blocking and tackling of the job. And then being able to take that and turn it into something that benefits the firm in a different way. And fortunately, the folks here at the firm saw that. Would I have been just as happy spending the rest of my career as a partner in audit, working with my clients? Most likely. I got to still do the business development pieces that I liked. I got to help people, which is important to me. But this is something that hasn't really traditionally been done in an accounting firm before, and so they thought, well, let's give it a shot. And hopefully they seem to feel it's worked out okay. So, like I said, they keep letting me come back.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. What I really want our students to take away is the opportunities for growth and the opportunities, to make a change potentially, or to get into a field where you never knew you may have had interest, right?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting story that I think that shift and that transition that you made, and obviously they recognized people skills and soft skills that I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't want that aren't present in abundance most often with accounting. Yeah, I mean, what's the best way to put that?
Oh, that was
Are most
very
accountants
kind.
introverted? Are most, I would, have
Yeah.
an introverted orientation, I would guess, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, let's get into that. Let's get into the people skills
Okay.
and the soft skills and the branding consideration. And the first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about personal branding, I've been doing a lot of audio books and what have I listened to Crush It and Influencer, and just trying to learn as much as I can about social media and the impact that it is having. You know, Instagram, now TikTok. I mean, people are exploding just by what I say, just being goofy, funny, and entertaining.
Yeah.
And we have, and I have felt a lot more pressure in just what we do to try to be more fun, goofy, and entertaining as well, because that's kind of where things are. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what I wanted to start off talking about was just the explosion in social media marketing, and how we're seeing people talk about themselves as brands and try to brand themselves, and I know it's a real fine line, being yourself, being a brand, being genuine, being authentic, but also being professional, right?
Yeah.
In the context of what you're doing in your job. So, I mean, what are some considerations you have about, what makes a strong personal brand, or just anything around social media marketing? I know you live in that world, and what you see as in young professionals.
I do. We spend a lot of time at LGT. We spend a lot of time in the marketing department kind of shepherding that brand. I mean, you want to be professional, but then you also want your company to have a personality as well. And the same is true for people. When you talk about branding, really all that is, and you hit on the word that I'm going to come back to time and time again, and that is authenticity. There's nothing, being on social media is really nothing more than being your authentic self, which is great. The social media that's out there that you individually curate and post on the different platforms really just tells your story in a variety of ways, whether it's through TikTok videos, or it's Instagram photos, or social media posts, it's whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever platform you're using. I found an interesting statistic. Now, again, I'm talking about branding for companies, but sure. It takes 5 to 7 impressions before a consumer actually recognizes a brand. So you as a company, like my company, we will appear in social media searches and different places, and it takes 5 to 7 times before that actually resonates with our prospective clients. But once it does, consumers make up their mind in 10 seconds about
Wow.
how they feel about that brand. So when you think about putting yourself out there in the market, again, you want to be strategic and get your name in front of the right people. But you also then, when they actually do notice you, they're going to make up their minds fairly quickly about whether or not they want to pursue you. So it's the same is true whether you're branding and marketing a company, or you're branding or marketing yourself. Your social media presence should be curated pretty well. Keeping it professional, keeping it clean, and current. Actually, current is the big thing. Keeping it, as you work through your degree plan, making sure that you're updating your credentials. For professionals, we generally turn to LinkedIn. That's the most commonly used one in the professional environment. It's not to say that employers don't also gravitate toward trying to find you on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And those are great too. It's not that employers don't want you to have fun, but you do need to be aware of some of the things that you're posting, or consider having a professional version and a personal version, and maybe the personal version's locked down a little bit more.
Well, it's funny you say that. It's not that they don't want you to have fun, but they're not as interested in the fun you in the beginning. They're more professional. They're more interested in the professional you
Right.
to get started. Right. And that's a great suggestion of, if you feel like you need to have it, have multiple and have a different focus potentially. Interesting. And it's something else that I didn't want to get past this, which I thought is really insightful and interesting, is to be seen 7 times as a brand. So something I talk to students about who are struggling with their searches and who are trying to build a professional network, especially international students who have a much more challenging
Yeah.
job search is if you want people to invest in you, trust in you as they would a brand, right? They need to become familiar with you. And that means they need to see you multiple times. They need to see you online. They need to see you in person at an event. They need to see you at the
Yes.
career fair. They need to see a message from you in their LinkedIn potentially, or a message from you because recruiters are getting, inundated with
Yeah.
messages and contacts. So the more they see you in different contexts, the more familiar they feel with you, the better your chances are going to be.
Absolutely. And and David, that's where your programs come in so much. Certainly at the Career Center, help, and especially with international students too, who, like you said, it's a more difficult job search. Utilizing the tools of the Career Center, building a strong resume. You wouldn't think it in accounting, but accounting is very team driven. And so if you're looking at a job in the accounting field, what we're going to be looking for is how have you participated in teams, in groups, in group projects? Have you led them? Have you been parts of student organizations where you've held positions of responsibility? Because those are, we come to the table understanding that you're going to have all the educational fundamentals that you need. It's not, we're not so much hung up on the fact that whether or not you have a 4.0, but we want to see that this person can function well in a team environment. And that starts also by developing fundamental skills. The communication skills, again, with foreign students can also be a challenge. If English isn't your first language, it's not the easiest thing to learn. So, networking and making yourself get out there can often be uncomfortable. But it will help you develop those skills. And that is what future employers are looking for, is how can you communicate and articulate well that you need to be a part of this group, that you need to be a part of this team, that you have the skills they're looking for.
And that's such a great point. I work with many international students and have had many international students in the office. And as an example, I guess, one of my Texas bucket list goals is I'd love to be fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. I'm lacking progress because it's intimidating speaking Spanish in front of Spanish speakers, and that's what you have to do to get good at Spanish.
Yeah.
I've been slow to pick that up, but and we really want to be transparent here and try to help students put their best foot forward. I've known employers, if you have an accent that is so thick that they're having a hard time understanding you, and I don't know a better way to put it, that could be a barrier. That could be a barrier. That's something that you would need to consider, and you do need to think about. Like I said, just being very, very transparent. But again, a lot of challenges for international students that we could talk on for quite a while. But you mentioned several platforms.
Yes.
That you suggested students use, LinkedIn being the most important. Are there any best practices or even don'ts? Things that sometimes we learn as much from making a mistake, or so do's and don'ts that you recommend for platforms.
Okay, I have. Well, first of all, LinkedIn is where you're going to go on the professional side. Instagram and Facebook are great. Those are still pretty common and pretty well researched. I run into, all right, so my field is accounting. And I love TikTok. I really do. It's not uncommon for me to go down the rabbit hole for quite some time on TikTok, because I really enjoy it, and there's so many really wonderfully creative things. However, on TikTok, my profession of accounting has become code for a different spicy lifestyle, or people who make money in spicy ways. So it's really, really difficult to search for anything on accounting on TikTok, because the content you get back is not what you're looking for. So just a heads up, if you haven't searched accounting on TikTok, don't. But The other thing too about for LinkedIn, especially right now and just in general, LinkedIn is really trying very hard to keep it very professional. I would avoid anything that is politically charged. I would avoid controversial topics. Just because you wouldn't discuss those in a boardroom, you wouldn't discuss those in your client's office, you probably shouldn't be discussing it out on social media. Save those types of conversations for different platforms that are more amenable to private and personal conversations. Take that to Facebook, or but I would avoid things that are controversial. As far as the do's, keep it professional, keep it current, keep it updated. Make sure that your current resume is available. If you're in the market searching, make sure that your resume is easily available, and that on LinkedIn, your profile is tagged that you're open for opportunities, because that will help other people who are searching find you. Also, brush up on your meta tags. What are the things that you should have in your profile, in case, because companies don't have the time to sit and actually just do searches by person or even by keyword. Often there are spider coding that can be used where that will go out and find specific keywords and bring those resumes back. So make sure that you've got the proper keywords or meta tags in your description, in your profile description about yourself, or on your resume or somewhere in your experience, so that search engines and search programs can identify those and pull them out more quickly. So making sure you have the right phrasing in your resume as well as on your LinkedIn bio is going to be very important.
Do you think it's is it almost an expectation that a young professional is going to have a LinkedIn account at this point, or is that too strong? Is it?
Yeah. Yes. And truthfully, right now the market is real strong for candidates. So if you are in a position, at least certainly in my industry, we are crying for new accountants. So if you are in a position where you are ready to start searching for internships or something like that, being proactive and actually contacting the recruiter directly, that is going to go a long way, because staffing in most industries right now is tight. It's particularly so in accounting. Every firm that I talk to is having the same conversations and struggling with the same issues, that we have all these clients to serve and not enough bodies to do it. So if accounting is your field, being proactive now will give you have an edge. It's not an employer's market right now. It is absolutely, the driver is the candidates. So making sure that, again, making sure you're visible is going to be very helpful.
Right, and if we dug down into the profile, which I think would be helpful for some students to understand, because when I'm talking to students about creating a presence online, because we rely so heavily on Handshake, and we're directing employers and students to postings in Handshake. A lot of students don't realize that they can leverage Handshake as well, create a profile similar to LinkedIn, a lot of the same functionality within those two. We encourage employers to look for you on Handshake, to look, for your resume there. So you want to make sure those are updated. But some things you would like to see, or some things that you'd be impressed by if you were reviewing a student's LinkedIn profile, what kinds of things would get your attention in terms of trying to brand themselves?
Well, first of all, seeing that it's completed. If you're going to take the time and effort to create a LinkedIn profile, then get a professional picture, build out the tagline, build out your description, attach your resume, complete it. And if nothing else, put in the organizations where you have been participating, whether it's Greek Life or you've done volunteer work or something like that. Put those organizations out there. Because again, like, for example, for my profession, that's the thing that we want to see is what have you been doing? How have you been showing leadership characteristics, and working in teams? So if you're going to go through the hassle of doing it, then definitely fill it out completely. I think it's great Now we're familiar with Handshake because we do a lot of recruiting from UTA, but there are a lot of employers that don't. So don't rely solely on one or the other. If you have an opportunity to have a profile on both, absolutely take the time and do that. They can say the same thing.
Right.
But if one is good, then two is better. Because again,
Absolutely.
you're more visible. And if they don't catch you one place, they can catch you another.
I always use the fishing analogy being from Kentucky, right? I mean, the more lines you have in the water, the better your chances are going to be. So leverage all those platforms. I don't think, and I'd love your input and thoughts on this. I don't know that we've reached a point where recruiters in most sectors are actively recruiting through a TikTok. I mean, you might get noticed in TikTok in other areas, but I don't know, are we using TikTok at this point for recruitment?
I haven't seen it. And then again, my industry is limited by the hijacking of our hashtag. So that I haven't seen a lot of that, but that doesn't mean it's not happening in other industries. You could very well be in healthcare or human resources or IT, and TikTok be a very viable opportunity. I don't see it particularly in my industry, but there's always going to be some new platform. I mean, if you're significantly older and you remember MySpace before Facebook, Facebook, there was MySpace. So social media is constantly evolving, and different platforms change and evolve over time in what their usefulness is. But you got to be mindful of your presence on them. That's all. I mean, and again, it's not that employers don't want you to have fun, but they don't want to see you at a kegger when we're trying to hire for a professional position. It's not that you can't do that or it doesn't exist. It just needs to not be your Facebook profile photo. Right.
I mean, it speaks to your decision-making ability, right? and whether you understand context. I mean, it might not be the fact that you were at the kegger, but it's the fact that you put out there for everyone to see that you were at the kegger.
Right. Like of all the photos that you've ever had taken of you, this is the one that you want to face the world with.
It's not a good decision. That's not a good decision. Right.
Yeah.
So the question I often get from students is, everyone wants to know how to stand out. So in terms of qualities or skills that you think are in short supply, in young professionals you see, and kind of being in a sales, marketing, branding kind of field, what are your thoughts about what employers want to see most?
What we find most right now is that candidates are struggling with interpersonal skills, communication, and patience. Those are the three things that seem to be the biggest challenge. The pandemic was so harmful in so many ways other than just particularly health, that we've lost years of people being able to fine-tune and develop the skills that you're going to need out in the business world. And regardless if it's accounting or any other business, you have to be able to articulate your ideas and what career you want, even in a way that is meaningful to employers. And then when you get into an organization, you have to be able to navigate through that by developing interpersonal relationships. And those are some challenges, especially if all you've had been able to do the last couple of years is sit in front of a laptop. Now, I mean, there's never going to be a substitute for being able to go and meet my clients in person and shake their hands and sit at the table and talk about what their concerns are, because that's that relationship building and rapport, and networking can be, I know you've done stuff on networking before, and so I'm not going to dive too deeply into it, but even if, I do presentations all the time. I speak nationally if on occasion. I go to networking events all the time. That's not to say that it's not uncomfortable to walk into a room and not know a single soul in there. I get uncomfortable sometimes, but everyone else is uncomfortable too. That's the thing.
Right.
So, pick somebody who looks nice, who returns your smile, and, start there.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Let's see. I have so many questions here. I'm rolling down the list, but what I'd like to do is is open things back up to the students to see if
Okay.
we've had any new students join us who would like to get on camera and practice the pitch, or if not, would like to ask a question. If you would prefer to send it through the chat, you're welcome to, but we'd love to see you take the opportunity to use the technology and those soft skills we were talking about and ask a question. So we'll give it some of that wait time. If anyone has a question, please. I know I've asked a lot of excellent questions and we've had great discussion, but if anyone has any questions. It's just more time for me. I'll give it a couple more seconds just in case. So while folks are thinking, considering, what would you say something, and I know we're kind of covering a lot of, well, everything we're talking about covers a lot of different majors, but I mean, I know specifically I'm thinking about accounting because of the industry, and I'm thinking about marketing because of your role and background. But what's something you think we could talk about marketing students? What's something you think every marketing student should know or understand as a young professional, or something we could just generally talk about a young professional coming into the industry, something that's really important for them to be aware of and to focus on?
Two things come to mind. And actually, first of all, before I answer that, one of the students did ask for my email address. David, are you going to provide my contact information and stuff in the
yes,
afterward?
Yeah, absolutely. We have your email. I'm double checking the comments. Email, and I think also your LinkedIn in the comments. If we don't have it there now, it will be headed there.
Okay,
soon.
wonderful. Perfect. And I encourage you, you know, either the three that are watching it now or anyone who watches this in the future, I encourage you to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a huge network of folks in a variety of industries, and I like helping people. So frankly, if you know, I would encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's connect there. My email address will be out there as well. I'm happy to help again in whatever way I can. So, all right. So getting back to your question, David, about something that everyone should know about marketing, two things come to mind. One, remember that social media is forever. The internet is forever. And the last thing you want to do is go viral for the wrong reason. So, you know, if you feel that there are things on your social media that you would just prefer others not to see, then when you're job hunting, lock it down. But you know, just remember that the internet is forever, and I, you know, there is horror story after horror story of people who post something and then wake up the next morning and realize that, you know, 150 people have contacted their employer, and you know, I mean, and so that there's just don't. The other thing too, though, so getting back to something much more positive, and that is one of the things that I encourage you to ask about when you are interviewing and when you're talking with prospective employers, ask about a young professionals program, ask about mentoring opportunities. Those things most companies have them certainly by now. And what it does is it lets the employer know that you are interested in doing something or being a part of something that is going to be long term. Getting involved in those types of things at any particular company demonstrates to the employer that you have a willingness to get out there. And it also demonstrates that you are looking at this not as a job, but as something much more long term. So if you are interviewing or if you are looking for, you know, you're sending your resume out and you're talking to recruiters, ask about those types of programs. Additionally, they are incredibly beneficial for you when you come on board. We have a formal mentorship program, which is great. You're paired up with somebody who doesn't work in your department and someone who's a little bit more experienced than you. And I love the way our mentorship program works. Separately, though, we have like in our audit department, you're given an audit buddy. And that is someone who is much closer to you in age and level at the firm. And, you know, that's the person you ask when you have these really embarrassing questions that you don't want to ask your boss or that you don't want. But you can go to your audit buddy. You can be like, look, hey, here's the deal. I don't know how to do this, or who do I ask for this, or how do I find out, you know, how to handle something like this? And it's that relationship is much more personal, rather than a supervisor-supervisee thing. So ask about those types of safety nets that companies build in, because that is an investment that the company's making in your success as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. I know we are, time flies and we're creeping up on things here, but I wanted to ask, we always have a lot of fun and learn a lot from the 5 burning questions to kind of wrap things up.
Okay.
You've been very gracious to share a lot about your background and path to your career, but curious to know, what was your first job and or dream job, if you're willing to share?
I'll share both. My first job was selling carpet cleaning over the phone.
It's tough.
That is tough.
That's tough.
You learn to deal with the word no a lot.
Right.
So my first job was selling carpet cleaning over the phone. My dream job, if money were no option, my dream job, or were no issue, if money were no issue, my dream job would be to be a curator at a museum.
Oh, how cool. Interesting.
Yeah. I still have my liberal arts roots.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, archaeology, I still sometimes dream of being Indiana Jones. You know, archaeology was my thing. A museum, I love love that kind of stuff. Love the histories, feel it. You can just feel it.
Yep.
Who or what has been most instrumental in your career development, do you think?
When I was in, actually both are, it's funny enough, both are going to be very early in my career when I was in banking. One, I worked with this absolutely amazing woman who taught me the value of client service and putting our customers and our clients ahead of yourself. And so I certainly early in my career, and even now every now and then, I kind of challenge, like, all right, what would Jean do if she was right here? What would be her answer? And then the thing that was another thing that was most instrumental, I got some very good leadership training very early on. When I was in banking, I got a lot of really good training about interpersonal skills, about how to lead and manage teams. Surprisingly, a lot of focus on body language, how to,
Interesting.
if like, for example, if I want somebody to be on my side and, buy into what I want to tell them, that conversation never happens with a desk between us. Right. It's always me sitting side by side with them. And things like dynamics on, I'm 6'4" and pretty broad-shouldered, so most people are shorter than me. So whenever I have a conversation, I generally am sitting, because I don't want to stand over. I don't want to stand over someone. Yeah.
Right.
So lots of good training on management styles and interpersonal skills. That has been incredibly helpful through my entire career.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Do you have, I know you mentioned, I guess you kind of briefly mentioned a role model or mentor, but is there anyone else, you don't have to give a shout out necessarily, but
yes,
how someone may have impacted you or along the way?
He'd be surprised if he heard this, but when I first started my role running this department, I was really apprehensive about it, and there was a friend of mine that he and I had done business back and forth for quite some time. He's actually in recruiting, by the way, and he was a little bit ahead of me in his career path, but not much. So we were kind of coming up through the ranks together, and he helped me a lot in developing my management style. He helped me learn a lot of patience, because he was on the partner track at his firm, and I was going to be on the partner track at mine. And it was a lot of patience, grasshopper. It just takes a little bit of time, and you've got to demonstrate that you can do the job. And I just thought, well, you just need to promote me now. Like, I understand why. And
Right.
He's like, you can't come and expect to be running the show after 6 months. Like, you have to earn those stripes, and it takes a little bit of time to do that. So anyway, but his name is Ben, and he's obviously a very good friend of mine. We talk all the time.
Oh, that's awesome. What would you say was your greatest mistake? We don't necessarily have to say failure, although I think failure is a positive thing. Get you to success the more you do it, right? So what was your greatest failure or mistake, and what did you learn from it?
I was working in a job once where I was not truthful, and I got caught and fired.
I have a lot of follow-up questions, but I ought to leave that alone. But what I love about that is, I mean, we have so. I mean, I don't love anything about that, Lucas. I mean, for you,
I didn't either.
But what I love about it, what I love about you sharing it with students is, I mean, so many folks can relate to that. So many folks have been through something like that, you know, and I think sometimes today we feel like if you make a mistake, it's a death sentence. You know, there's no way to come back from being let go or being downsized or being, because it's just a hit, you know.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. What would you say is the best piece of advice you've received?
All right, please don't roll your eyes. I've been trying to think of something witty and insightful, but honestly, the bottom line for me is be yourself. I have, over the years of the 15 years that I've been at the firm, I have made a lot of friends, and I have really developed strong relationships, but you can't do that unless you're authentic and you're yourself. And so when you find your people, you're going to click with them and they're going to love you, but they have to see you. And
Right.
which is one of the things I love so much about the commitment to DEI that we've seen recently, is that there's a business case to be made for diversity, equity, and inclusion, because people bring their authentic selves to work and they're happier and better at their jobs when they do. So be yourself, and you'll know when you find your people, because they'll be crazy and wonderful and love you just as much.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. It's a great kind of way to wrap things up. I like to thank you again, Lucas LaChance, for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. We've covered a lot. And before we close, I was just curious if there's anything you would like to leave folks with or share before we go, knowing, folks, that we're going to be putting the links in the chat. You're going to be seeing the links and the contact information out there. But anything else you'd like to address before we close?
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. It's good stuff.
No, I mean, I think, well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity. It's, I got a lot of help and support and encouragement along the way in my career. And there are lots of us who are like that, who are also very, very much looking forward to finding ways that we can give back, especially to a future generation. So, mentorship is something that's very important. Find yourself a mentor, either in your business or outside of your business. But find somebody that you can really bounce ideas off of. Having an external sounding board is going to be critical, because if you don't have that, you wind up in an echo chamber. Like I said, I love helping folks. I encourage you, now, current students here and the ones that watch us in the future, connect with me on LinkedIn, especially if you're in accounting. I'd love to be able to shepherd you through in some way if I can. And my contact information is available. I'm looking forward to meeting people and helping out where I can.
Thanks, Lucas. Excellent. Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate your time, and thanks to Lane Gorman Trubitt for being a fantastic Edge partner, supporting us in these kinds of events and offering opportunities to UTA students. Once again, that information is going to be in the comments. Look for us on the email distribution list. Reach out to us at Mavs Edge at uta.edu. If you're not on that list, email us at that address, and we'll get you added. Best of luck during the semester. Take care.
Bye, everybody.